Cleanliness is the only thing left in my power. I wipe the table in a circular motion like I've done all my life, from left to right. Every morning starts with the same ritual: rise at 6 sharp, oatmeal with raisins, a cup of black tea, 3 pills. Then clean up. It's Sunday, which means Christian and Sylvia will be here by 5 p.m. I don't want them to come. They don't want them to come. But we all keep playing the game. My name is Winton Barrow. I'm 78 years old, and for the last 5 of those years, I've lived alone in this house on the outskirts of Texas City. Since Edna's death, the days have gotten longer, and the nights have gotten interminably long. 49 years of marriage turned to ashes on a shelf in the living room, in a porcelain urn that I wipe down every day, even though there is no dust on it. The small house Edna and I bought back in the 70s seems huge now. Sometimes I hear the old floorboards creaking in the other room, and for a second I think it's her. Then I remember that there's no one else in the house but me, and there won't be. My gaze clings to the picture on the mantelpiece, the only one of us together: me, Edna, Christian, and Sylvia. Their wedding day, 7 years ago. I remember how unusual it was to see my son in a suit. All his life in worn jeans and t-shirts, and suddenly a suit, Sylvia insisted. She always insists on something. Christian was 36 when he brought her into the house. Too late for my taste, but who am I to judge? Son is a postal worker, has been walking the same streets of Texas City for 16 years. Edna always said he could have accomplished more. I never said it out loud, but I thought the same thing. Sylvia is 6 years younger than him, legal counsel for a firm I can't remember the name of. Always impeccably dressed, never late, moderately talkative, moderately attentive. A perfect daughter-in-law on paper. But something about her always made me feel wrong, like a false note in a familiar melody. Edna died before she could get to know Sylvia. Maybe it was for the best. My wife was always the best judge of character. The clock strikes 3. 2 more hours until they arrive. I take the roast meat out of the refrigerator, a dish Christian loved as a child. He's not likely to appreciate it now. Sylvia is likely to bring out her healthy salad mix again and insist we all try it. Winton, it's so important to watch your health at your age, she'll say with that rehearsed concern in her voice. I slice the carrots into even cubes. I used to be an accountant auditor, and the habit of accuracy has lasted a lifetime. 45 years of checking numbers, finding errors in other people's calculations. It always seemed that I could see what others couldn't. Maybe that's why I don't trust Sylvia. Too much about her doesn't add up. At 5 o'clock, sharp, Sylvia never lets me be late. I hear the sound of a car pulling up. Their white sedan, as impersonal as most of the cars on our block. Through the window, I see them get out. Christian in his usual plaid shirt, Sylvia in a summer dress, with a plate covered in foil. Salad, of course. Dad! Christian nods, crossing the threshold. We don't hug. Never hugged, not even when he was a kid. Winton, how are you feeling? Sylvia's already in the hallway, smiling her rehearsed smile. We brought that herbal tea I told you about. It works wonders for your blood pressure. My blood pressure is fine, I answer dryly, even though it's not. But admitting weakness in front of her is like giving my throat to a wolf. Of course, she smiles even wider. But prevention never hurts. We walk into the kitchen. Sylvia puts her plate on the table and starts fussing about like it's her house and not mine. She rearranges the utensils I've already set out, moves the salt shaker from one place to another. Is there anything I can do to help? She asks, though she's already helping without permission. It's ready, I cut her off, taking the roast out of the oven. Christian is already sitting at the table, staring at his phone. He used to be a talkative boy, but now I have to get every word out of him. How was work? I ask, knowing the answer will be sparse. It's fine. He doesn't even look up. He's getting a promotion next week, Sylvia intervenes, sitting down next to her husband. He'll be in charge of the entire Western District. It's not certain yet, Christian mumbles, but she elaborates. The chief says it's practically a done deal. You're too modest, dear. Christian just shrugs his shoulders. I notice Sylvia puts her hand on his, squeezing it a little, a gesture that from the outside might seem reassuring, but I see his shoulders tense. Control, not support. We eat in silence, broken only by the clinking of forks against plates and Sylvia's on-duty questions about my health, my house, and my neighbors. She always asks about the neighbors, who I see more often, who I talk to, who goes to whose house. Maybe it's just her way of keeping the conversation going, but I always felt like there was something behind it. Mrs. Allen broke her hip, I say, watching her reaction. Her niece lives with her now. Us, niece? Sylvia perks up. From where? Beaumont, I think. How long is she staying? I don't know, I answer, though I do know, until Mrs. Allen is well again, and then perhaps longer. But something makes me keep that information to myself. Sylvia nods, too interested for mere politeness. I notice her glance at Christian, who seems completely absorbed in his plate. Your roast is different, Papa, he says suddenly. Not like it used to be. His words hit harder than he probably realizes. Of course it's not like it used to be. Edna used to make it. I'm just repeating the recipe as I remember it. I can make it next time, Sylvia offers, as if catching an opportunity. I have a wonderful recipe from my mother. Another lie. She once blurted out that she grew up in an orphanage and never knew her parents. Small lie, but why? What else is she hiding? I can handle it, I answer firmly. After dinner, Christian helps me with the dishes, the only thing left from our previous relationship. We stand side by side at the sink, him washing, me wiping. Sylvia's in the living room, supposedly calling a coworker. How are you really doing, Dad? Shreich? He asks quietly without looking at me. I'm fine, I answer in his own words. You look tired. I'm 78. At my age, that's normal. He sighs, handing me a clean plate. I could come by more often. You don't have to, I interrupt. You have your own life. We both know his offers empty words. He's not coming, and I'm not waiting. When the dishes are washed, we go back into the living room. Sylvia is sitting on the couch with her phone in her hand, but quickly puts it away when we enter. Another little thing that alarms me. Always those secret calls. We have to go, she announces, standing up. Christian has an early shift tomorrow, and I need to get the paperwork ready for the meeting. Sure, I nod. As always, they leave before 7. They never stay late. The goodbye's as low-key as the meeting. Christian claps me awkwardly on the shoulder. Sylvia gives me her catchphrase. See you next Sunday, Winton. Don't forget those herbs. And they leave, leaving the house empty and quiet again. I stand at the window, watching their car pull into the driveway. I see Sylvia saying something, gesturing vigorously, and Christian just nods, never taking his eyes off the road. She always talks, he always listens, or pretends to listen. As the car disappears around the corner, I return to the kitchen and notice Sylvia's forgotten scarf. Pink, silk, intricately patterned. I pick it up, and something in the pocket of my robe jingles. I take it out, a packet of pills. The same ones Sylvia brought for my blood pressure. I don't remember her giving them to me. I look at the label. The name's long, Latin, I can't make it out. But I'm pretty sure I didn't ask her to bring me any medicine. And I don't remember her handing them to me today. I put the pills on the table and stare at them for a long time, not knowing what to think. Maybe I'm getting paranoid at my age. Or maybe my old auditor's instincts are still working. Something doesn't add up about this woman. Something doesn't add up about our Sunday dinners. Something doesn't add up about the man my son has become around her. I toss the pills in the trash and return to my evening ritual. I wipe down the desk, check the locks, turn off the lights. Tomorrow it'll be the same thing all over again. Up at 6, oatmeal, tea, pills. Just my pills, prescribed by my doctor, not Sylvia's. I don't trust her, and for good reason it seems. The arthritis worsened by mid-October, just as the first cold weather arrived in Texas City. The pain started in the joints of my fingers and gradually climbed higher, like rust eating away at old pipes. When I was young, I didn't pay much attention to minor aches and pains. Now every morning began with a mental inventory. What hurt worse? What hurt less? What stopped working altogether? That Tuesday it had been raining since dawn. The dampness crept through the walls of the house, aggravating the pain in my joints. The usual pills were no longer enough. I wrinkled my nose as I tried to button my shirt, a simple task that turned into torture. Finally, I gave up and put on a sweater. Edna always said I was too proud to admit when I needed help. She was right, as she was about so many other things. Riverview Pharmacy was a 15-minute walk from my house. I used to cover that distance in 10, but times change and so do the speed of my steps. The small brick building with the green sign stood on the corner of Myrtle Street and Avenue D, sandwiched between a laundromat and an appliance store. I started going in there more often. First once every 2 weeks, then once a week, now almost every other day. The doorbell jingled as I entered. The familiar smell of medicine and antiseptic. Behind the counter stood Leona Pickering, bent over some papers. She looked up and smiled, recognizing me. "Mr. Barrow, back to see us again?" There was none of the fake concern in her voice that I'd heard from Sylvia. Just genuine friendliness, unadulterated. "We're running low on supplies," I answered, holding out the empty analgesic packet. Leona nodded and turned to the shelves of medications. She was in her mid-50s with short graying hair and deep wrinkles around her eyes, the marks of a smile, not a frown like mine. She had worked at this pharmacy for 23 years and knew everyone on the block by name. "Are your joints bothering you more?" she asked, returning with a box of pills. "Every day," I admitted. "Maybe you should try something stronger. We've got a new drug, and a lot of people are praising it." I shook my head. "The usual will do. I don't like to experiment." Leona smiled, but her eyes flashed something like sympathy. "Stubborn as ever." She punched the check. "How's your son, by the way? Haven't seen him in a while." "Still the same. Comes in on Sundays with his wife, leaves before dark. And this wife of his, Sylvia, right? How is she?" I shrugged, taking the change. "Still as spotless as ever." Leona hummed understandingly. Something in her gaze made me linger. "Do you know her?" I asked, trying to make the question sound casual. "She comes in sometimes." Leona lowered her voice, even though there was no one else in the pharmacy but us. "She's weird, if you ask me." "In what way?" "It's hard to explain." She frowned. "Always polite, always smiling, but behind that smile, it's empty. It's like she's playing a role. Exactly what I've felt all these years, but couldn't put into words. The emptiness behind the perfect facade." "Do you buy any medication for her?" I asked, remembering the pills Sylvia had tried to slip me. Leona shook her head. "No, she usually just looks in the windows, sometimes takes vitamins, often asks about other customers, who buys what, how often they come in. Too often for mere curiosity." My heart skipped a beat. "So I'm not the only one she's asking about the neighbors." "And also," Leona leaned closer, "about 6 months ago, she started getting interested in sleeping pills and sedatives. But she never buys them, only asks." The rain intensified, drumming on the roof of the pharmacy. We were both silent for a moment, listening to the sound. "So, you know, there's some new band in town," Leona finally said. "It's a church or a club. Children of the New World, I think." I hadn't heard. I put the medicine in my pocket. "They opened a center on Hope Street, in the building of the former cinema. They hold meetings in the evenings. Nothing out of the ordinary, but Pam at the laundromat says her niece went there once and changed immediately. She's aloof, often speaks in quotes that sound memorized, and something about unlocking potential and true purpose. Sounds like the usual motivational nonsense." I dismissed it. "Maybe," Leona shrugged. "But Pam said the girl was suddenly interested in which of her neighbors lived alone, who had savings, who was sick." Strange questions for a 19-year-old, don't you think? I remembered Sylvia, her constant questions about her neighbors. Coincidence? Or a connection I can't see yet? "Maybe they're just bored in our town, so they're just gathering gossip," I said, not wanting to show my concern. "Maybe." Leona was clearly not convinced. "But be careful, Mr. Barrow. At your age, it's best to stay away from strange groups." "At my age, I'm not likely to be recruited by anyone," I grinned. "You don't say. Lonely older people are the perfect target, especially with a home and a pension." I nodded, considering her words. The rain eased a little, and I decided it was time to go home. "Thanks for the medicine, Leona. Come back if you need anything," she waved at me, "and take care of yourself." It took longer to get home. My joints ached more, probably because of the damp. I thought about Leona's words. Children of the New World. What a pretentious name. Texas City has always been a conservative town. Religious groups aren't uncommon here. but most have been around for decades. Newcomers don't usually stick around. At home, I took a pill, made some tea, and sat by the window watching the rain. Thoughts of Sylvia kept me awake. Her interest in the neighbors, the strange phone calls, the pills she was trying to slip me. It all took on a new and disturbing perspective in the light of Leona's story. The following Thursday, I visited the pharmacy again. Although I had enough medicine, I just wanted to talk to Leona. She seemed pleased to see me. "What's new, Leona?" I asked, pretending to look at the vitamin display. "Same old stuff." She was wiping down the glass shelves. "No, there's something else, though. Remember that group I was talking about, the Children of the New World? Some kind of cult?" "I don't know if you can call them that," Leona lowered her voice. "But Jimmy from the drugstore warehouse saw them in charge. He drove up in a black SUV, all dressed in white. Very respectable, speaks with an accent. Sort of European. And he's giving his followers new names." "Sounds like a classic cult from a cheap thriller," I snorted. "Maybe," Leona agreed. "But they're definitely gaining in popularity. They had a meeting last week and about 30 people showed up. That's a lot of people for our town." "What do you think they do at these meetings?" "I have no idea. But Jimmy says he saw them bringing in some equipment. Looks like medical equipment." I remembered the pills Sylvia left at my house. What if it had something to do with it? The next Sunday brought another dinner with Christian and Sylvia. I watched my sister-in-law more closely, trying to notice things I hadn't seen before. She was the same. Perfect dress, perfect hair, perfect smile. But now I saw what Leona was talking about, the emptiness behind that smile. "How was work, Sylvia?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "A lot of business at your law firm?" "The usual routine." She waved it off. "Contracts, consultations. Nothing special." "What kind of cases are you doing now?" She paused for a moment, fork hovering over her plate. "Mostly corporate law, helping local businesses with documentation." The answer was too vague. I continued. "You know, I met Gordon Pierce the other day. He's a lawyer too. Maybe you two know each other." Again a pause, a little longer than the previous one. "I don't recall that," she said at last. "What office is he in?" "Same building as you. What did he say? Second floor?" "Ah," she nodded, but there was something like alarm in her eyes. "Must be from another firm. We have a big building." "False. There's no lawyer named Gordon Pierce in Texas City. I made him up to test Sylvia's reaction, and she failed the test." After dinner, while Christian was helping me with the dishes, Sylvia came out again with the phone. I purposely left the kitchen window ajar and heard a snippet of her conversation. "Yes, he's getting suspicious." "No, Christian doesn't notice anything. We'll have to speed things up." When they left, I sat in silence for a long time, pondering what I had heard. "We'll have to speed things up. What does that mean? And what kind of process?" My dislike for Sylvia was beginning to take shape. I went to the pharmacy again on Thursday, even though it was raining like a bucket. I needed to talk to Leona, the only person I trusted at the moment. "Mr. Barrow, you're soaked to the skin," she exclaimed when she saw me. "Sit down and I'll make you some tea." In the back room of the apothecary's shop was a small cubbyhole with a kettle and a couple of chairs. Leona sat me down there and brought me a cup of hot tea. "Thank you," I took a sip. "Leona, what else do you know about these children of the New World?" She raised her eyebrows in surprise. "Suddenly interested?" "Well, there are rumors that they use some kind of medication at their meetings. Not drugs, no. Some sort of sedative to help open the mind, as they say." "Where do they get them from?" "Not from us, that's for sure." Leona frowned. "Maybe they order them online, or maybe they have their own source." "Why do you ask?" I told her about the pills Sylvia had left at my house and the conversation I'd overheard. "Do you think she's connected to them?" Leona looked worried. "I don't know, but there are too many coincidences." We were silent, listening to the sound of the rain outside the window. Finally, Leona asked, "And your son, did he notice anything strange?" "Christian?" I grinned bitterly. "He only sees what he wants to see. He's always been like that." "Maybe we should talk to him." "And say what?" "Your wife might be in a cult and planning something against me. Without proof, it sounds like the ramblings of a crazy old man." "Sherbetui. But if you're right," Leona put her hand on mine, a gesture that surprised me but wasn't unpleasant. If you're right, it could be dangerous. I know, I nodded. That's why I want to figure it out. The next day, I decided to drive past the former movie theater on Hope Street, called a cab, a rare expense for me, but the weather was still too dank for walking. The driver, a young guy with an earpiece in his ear, seemed oblivious when I asked to drive slower past the movie theater. The building looked refreshed. A fresh sign reading New World Center shone above the entrance. Several people walked inside, all well-dressed with detached faces. I didn't see Sylvia among them, but that didn't mean anything. In the evening, I called Christian, also a rarity. We usually only talked on Sundays. "Dad, is something wrong?" He sounded surprised and worried. "Nothing's wrong," I lied. "I just wanted to ask how things were with you and Sylvia." "Fine," I paused. "You've never asked before." "Old age, I guess," I tried to joke. "Getting sentimental." "You," he chuckled. "I don't think so." Um, is Sylvia home now?" "No, she's in a meeting, a charity committee or something." "Thursday night?" "She's often involved in community work." Christian's voice became defensive. "Is something wrong?" "No, no," I hastened to assure him. "I just wanted to talk to you both, but it'll have to wait until Sunday." I hung up the phone and looked at my watch. 8 o'clock at night. If what Christian said was true and Sylvia's at the charity meeting, that's one thing. But what if she's at a Children of the New World meeting? Half an hour later, I hailed a cab again and asked for a ride to the movie theater on Hope Street. The driver was the same as he had been during the day, and again asked no questions. I asked him to stop on the opposite side of the street from where I could see the entrance to the center. People were still entering the building. I tensely scrutinized every face, and then, at 20 minutes past 9, I saw her, Sylvia, in a strict gray suit with a briefcase in her hand. She looked around quickly and stepped inside. My heart pounded in my chest. So I was right. She had lied to Christian about the charity committee. She was involved with the Children of the New World. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "Are you all right, sir?" "You look pale." "Take me back," I mumbled. I'd seen enough. At home, I couldn't sleep. Thoughts swirled in my head, forming a disturbing picture. Sylvia, with her perfect facade, in the emptiness behind it. Her interest in the neighbors, especially the lonely ones. The pills she tried to give me. Now her connection to this strange group. What did it all mean? All I knew was that my son, unknowingly, had married a woman who was clearly hiding something. And that something could be dangerous. For him, for me, perhaps for many others. I went to the drugstore again on Saturday, despite the increased pain in my joints. Leona greeted me with concern. "Mr. Barrow, you look exhausted. What's the matter?" I told her what I'd seen. She listened without interrupting, but frowned harder and harder. "We have to do something," she said when I was done. "If this group is really dangerous, we need to know more first." I interrupted her. "Just because Sylvia attends their meetings and lies about it doesn't prove anything concrete. And how are you going to find out more?" I shrugged, not wanting to drag Leona deeper into the story. "I have an idea." On Sunday, Christian and Sylvia arrived as usual. Dinner was held in the usual strained atmosphere, but I tried to act natural. Sylvia didn't seem to notice anything unusual either. Only when she went out to make a phone call did I see her glance at the medicine shelf in the bathroom, the same one where I kept my blood pressure and joint pills. After they left, I checked my medications. At first glance, everything was intact, but something told me this was the calm before the storm. On Monday, I decided to follow Sylvia. A risk for a man of my age and condition, but I had to know the truth. I asked the same cab driver, I think he was getting used to my strange rides, to take me to the office building where Sylvia supposedly worked. We got there by 9 in the morning. I sat in the car watching the entrance. Sylvia entered the building exactly at 9, punctual as always. But 20 minutes later, I saw her walk out the side door and get into her car. She shouldn't have left so soon if she really worked there. "Follow that white car," I said to the driver. "Just not too close." He nodded without question. Maybe he thought I was a private detective or something. We followed Sylvia across town until she stopped outside a small warehouse building on the outskirts. She went inside and stayed there for about an hour. When she came out, she had a medium-sized box in her hands. She put it in her trunk and drove back downtown, but not to her office, but to the New World Center building. There she picked up the box again and went inside. "Going back?" the driver asked. No, I answered. We'll wait a little longer. Sylvia got out half an hour later, without the box, and drove to her office. On the way, she stopped at Mrs. Allen's house, the same one who had broken her hip. What did she need there? When we got back to my house, I paid the driver generously and asked for his phone number. If you need any more rides, can I call you directly? Sure, mister. He handed me a business card. Blaine at your service. That evening, I went to the drugstore again. Leona was finishing her shift, so we went to a small cafe across the street. Over a cup of coffee, I told her about my observations. It's all very strange, she said, stirring the sugar in her cup thoughtfully. What was in that box, do you think? I don't know, but something tells me it wasn't stationary. Why would she go to Mrs. Allen's house? Do they know each other? Not that I know of, but Mrs. Allen is single, vulnerable due to trauma, and she owns a house. A perfect target, if your theory is to be believed. Leona shook her head. Mr. Barrow, I'm afraid you may have been right about your sister-in-law, and it may be more dangerous than we thought. I nodded, feeling a chill run down my spine. The puzzle was slowly coming together, and the picture was disturbing. Sylvia wasn't just unusual or strange. She was part of something sick, and my son, and me, and probably many others in Texas City were in danger. What are you going to do? Leona asked, her eyes expressing genuine concern. Keep watching, I answered. So, and when there's enough evidence, tell Christian he needs to know who he married. Wednesday morning, the rain finally stopped. Rays of the November sun shyly broke through the clouds for the first time in a week. My morning dose of painkillers was no longer doing the trick. My hands were swollen and red, and every movement was a dull ache. My fingers refused to bend. I stood at the bathroom mirror staring at my reflection, the deep wrinkles, the faded eyes, the slouching shoulders. Old man, I thought without self-pity, just a statement of fact. Blaine, my now regular cab driver, was due at 10 to take me to the pharmacy. Dr. Sheldon, the doctor I'd been going to for 15 years, had prescribed a stronger medication. The prescription was burning my jacket pocket. I was in no hurry to use it, but today the pain was winning. At 9:30, the phone rang. Blaine, probably. I picked it up, preparing to hear that he'd be late. Mr. Barrow? Leona's voice sounded tense. What happened? Sylvia came into the drugstore last night. Leona spoke quickly, as if she was afraid of being interrupted. She asked about you, about your medication. She was particularly interested in your new painkiller. My pulse was racing. What did you tell her? That you came in for a consult, but you didn't fill the prescription. She offered to pick it up for you, but I said no. I told her we only dispense prescription drugs in person. Thank you, Leona, I exhaled. She didn't say why? She said she was worried about you, wanted to help, but I didn't believe her. Leona was quiet for a moment, then added, Be careful, Mr. Barrow. Whatever she's up to, it's obviously something bad. I thanked Leona and hung up. So Sylvia is interested in my medication. Why? To tamper with them? Or to know what drugs are already in my system? My mouth was dry with anxiety. The cab pulled up at exactly 10 o'clock. Blaine, a young man with a neatly trimmed beard, nodded as he helped me into the car. He already knew where to go, without further ado. It's nice weather today, he said, pulling onto the main road. Finally, I agreed, looking at the drying puddles. How long have you been a cab driver, Blaine? 3 years, he shrugged. It doesn't pay much, but I make my own schedule. Enough time to study. You go to school? City College, night program. I want to be an engineer. I nodded, looking at the back of this young man's head. There was something reassuring about his simple determination. Christian had already resigned himself to being a mailman at his age, though Edna and I could have paid his tuition at any college in the state. We pulled up to the drugstore around 10:15. Blaine helped me out of the car. Would you wait? I asked. It won't be long. Sure, Mr. Barrow, I'll be here. Leona greeted me with obvious relief. Her eyes looked me over anxiously from head to toe, as if checking to make sure all the pieces were in place. You're just in time. She lowered her voice. Sylvia called this morning, asked about your recipe again. What did you tell her? That you hadn't picked it up yet. Leona looked back at the door, as if checking to see if anyone was there. Mr. Barrow, I'm getting really worried. So am I admitted. But without proof, there's nothing we can do. How about we talk to the sheriff? Leona suggested. Hayes Colton is a good man, he'd listen. I shook my head. And what would I tell him? That my sister-in-law might be in a cult and interested in my medicine? He'd laugh at the old man out of his mind. I don't think he'll react that way, Leona objected. But I understand your concerns. She handed me a bag of medicine. Be careful with this one. It's strong. Don't leave it where Sylvia might find it. I won't. I tucked the packet into the inside pocket of my jacket. Thank you, Leona, for everything. She smiled, but the smile didn't touch her eyes. Take care. Blaine was waiting for me, as promised. Opened the door, helped me inside. Home? He asked, starting the engine. I thought about it for a moment. I didn't want to go back to an empty house, knowing that Sylvia might be planning something against me. No, I decided. Let's drive past my sister-in-law's office. And I gave the address. Blaine nodded, showing no surprise. He'd seen enough weirdness on my part in our short history. We parked across the street from the office building. I squinted my eyes, scrutinizing the entrance. Sylvia had to be at work at this hour. Would you wait a little while? I asked Blaine. As long as it takes. He leaned back in his seat, pulling out his cell phone. About 40 minutes later, I saw Sylvia. She came out of the building, accompanied by two men, one tall, in an expensive suit, the other shorter, stout. They talked quickly, then Sylvia nodded and walked to her car. Follow her, I said to Blaine. Just not too close. He sighed, putting the phone away. Mr. Barrow, I don't mind helping, but are you sure this is a good idea? No, I admitted honestly, but it's necessary. Blaine shrugged and started the engine. We kept our distance, following Sylvia's white sedan. It wasn't heading toward the New World Center or her and Christian's house. The car turned into a residential neighborhood I rarely visited. Where is she going? I mumbled, more to myself than to Blaine. It's an old neighborhood, he said. It's mostly retired people. It's not upscale, but it's not exactly decadent. Sylvia pulled up in front of a small one-story house. She got out of the car, opened the trunk, and took out a box, like the one I'd seen before. Looking around, she walked quickly to the door and knocked. Pull over here, I commanded Blaine, and turn off the engine. We were far enough away that Sylvia wouldn't see us, but I ducked down in the seat anyway. The door of the house was opened by an elderly woman. She was leaning on a cane and looked sickly. Sylvia smiled at her and said something. The woman invited her inside. Who lives there? Do you know? I asked Blaine. He shook his head. I have no idea. I don't go to that neighborhood much. Sylvia stayed in the house for about 20 minutes. When she came out, the box was gone. She got into her car and drove away. We didn't follow her. I was too intrigued by this visit. Wait here, I said to Blaine, opening the door. Hey, what are you doing? He sounded worried. I want to see who lives there. Mr. Barrow, it's not... Blaine started, but I was already out of the car. My joints were aching, and it was hard to walk, but my curiosity was getting the better of me. I walked up to the house and looked in the mailbox. The name on the envelope read, H. Pratt. The name didn't tell me anything. I walked slowly back to the cab. Did you recognize anything? Blaine asked. I'm not sure. Let's go to the drugstore. I need to talk to Leona. When we got back, Leona was finishing serving an elderly couple. She smiled when she saw me, but there was concern in her eyes. Mr. Barrow, did you forget something? No. I waited for the couple to leave. Leona, do you happen to know a certain G. Pratt? Leona thought for a moment. Gloria Pratt? Yeah, she's a client of ours. She's about 75, lives alone. Husband died a couple years ago. She has severe arthritis and heart problems. She wouldn't happen to be one of the New World kids, would she? I don't think so. Leona frowned. She rarely leaves the house because of her health. Why do you ask? I told her about what I had seen. With each word, her face grew more anxious. Mr. Barrow, I don't like this at all. She shook her head. Ha ha, Gloria is a lonely, sick woman with her own home and pension. That's the kind of person who... Targeted, I finished for her. What are you going to do? I don't know yet, but I have a feeling we don't have much time. Leona nodded. I'm working until 6 today. Why don't you pick me up and we can go to a cafe? We can talk about it in more detail. That's a good idea. I walked back to the cab where Blaine was waiting. Home now? He asked. Yeah, but then I have to be back here by 6. I'll be waiting, Blaine nodded. At home, I hid the new medicine in a stash I'd made behind a bookshelf. No one knew about it but me. I left the old pills in plain sight, just in case. After noon, I dozed off in my chair. I woke up to the phone ringing. It was Christian. Dad, are you okay? What happened? I asked, trying to shake off the drowsiness. Shiver. Sylvia says she came by to see you, but you weren't home. She's worried. A chill ran down my spine. Sylvia came to see me while I was watching her. I went to the drugstore, I answered, trying to keep my voice calm. Why did she come by? She wanted to leave you some lunch and herbal tea. She said you didn't look well on Sunday. I'm fine, I said, looking around the room. Nothing seemed touched. Well, tell her not to worry. Okay. Christian was quiet for a moment. Dad, are you really okay? You've been kind of weird lately. My joints are just hurting more because of the weather. I lied. Nothing unusual for my age. After the conversation, I checked the house. Everything looked untouched, but something told me Sylvia hadn't just stopped by to drop off lunch. She was looking for something. My medication, maybe. Or other evidence that I was beginning to guess her secret. At 5:30, Blaine pulled up in front of my house. I walked out to him with a small bag in which I put a notebook, a pen, and a picture of Sylvia cut from a family snapshot. To the drugstore? Blaine asked. Yes, and then perhaps to the cafe. At the drugstore, Leona was already getting ready to close. When she saw me, she smiled and gestured that she needed 5 minutes. I waited, looking at the vitamin display. The doorbell jingled. I turned around and almost dropped my cane. Sylvia was standing in the doorway. She didn't see me right away, heading straight for the counter where Leona was organizing the medications. Good evening. Sylvia's voice was honeyed, as always. I wanted to ask about Mr. Barrow's prescription. What prescription? Leona asked, giving me a quick glance. Sylvia followed her gaze and saw me. Winton, she smiled with fake surprise. What a coincidence. I was just talking about you. I see. I walked over to the counter, leaning on my cane more heavily than usual, not so much for pain as to show weakness. What brings you here, Sylvia? I'm worried about you. She put her hand on my shoulder, and I barely restrained myself from pulling away. You didn't look well on Sunday, and I was wondering if you needed help with your medication. Thanks, but I'm doing fine. I looked her straight in the eye, trying to figure out what she was up to. I guess I'll be going then. She smiled, but her eyes remained cold. Christian and I are expecting you on Sunday as usual. She walked out and Leona and I exchanged glances. What is she up to? Leona whispered as soon as the door closed. I don't know, but we have to be careful. 15 minutes later, we were sitting in a small cafe across from the drugstore. Blaine was waiting in the car, and I told him it might take a while. She's obviously up to something, Leona said, stirring her coffee. But what is it? I think they want access to my money and my house, I suggested. That would explain why Sylvia is trying to control my medication. Probably wants to incapacitate me. Do you think she's capable of... Leona didn't finish the sentence, but I realized what she meant. I don't know, but I'm not going to sit around and wait for her to decide to act. We were discussing possible plans of action when I noticed a familiar figure through the window. Sylvia was walking across the street, heading toward the alley between the buildings. That's her, I pointed to Leona. What's she doing here? I don't know, but we can check. We paid quickly and left the cafe. I asked Leona not to get too close so Sylvia wouldn't see her. We walked cautiously along the street, keeping in the shadows of the buildings. Sylvia turned down a narrow alley, and we stopped at the beginning of it, listening. At first, I couldn't make out what she was saying. Her voice was muffled, and she had her back to us. But then we heard fragments of phrases in a language I did not understand. It wasn't Latin or Spanish or French, the only languages I had any familiarity with. It sounded guttural, with harsh consonants. I looked at Leona. She shook her head, also not recognizing the language. Suddenly, Sylvia switched to English. Now her voice sounded harsh, businesslike, without a shadow of the usual honeyed sweetness. The old man is beginning to suspect something. I tried to put the drug in his food, but he's too cautious. He was at the pharmacy again today, talking to that pharmacist. A pause as if she was listening for an answer. No, Christian doesn't notice anything. He's completely under control. We've got the information on the mail routes. Now we need the data on the pensioners. I strained my ears, trying not to miss a word. My heart was pounding so hard I was afraid she'd hear. The next batch of the drug will be ready by the end of the month. We've already tested it on 3 subjects, including Gloria Pratt. The results are excellent. Total suggestibility, no resistance. They're signing whatever documents they want. Leona squeezed my hand so hard it hurt through her arthritis. We'll have to move faster with Winton. He's too observant for his age. I'll report to Mentor that we're moving on to Plan B. Another pause. Yes, all the paperwork's been prepared. As soon as he signs the power of attorney, the house is ours. And with access to his bank account, we can fund the next phase. I felt my legs start to shake. Leona picked me up, helping me steady myself. The children of the new world will soon be a force to be reckoned with, Sylvia whispered, and we had to strain to hear. All hail, Mentor. Hail to the new order. She fell silent, apparently finished talking. Leona and I retreated deeper into the shadows, waiting for Sylvia to emerge from the alley. She appeared a moment later, but she walked in the opposite direction from us, not even looking back. When she was out of sight, Leona turned to me. Did you hear what I heard? She's planning to use some kind of drug to make me suggestible and force me to sign documents. I finished, feeling my hands shaking. And then probably get rid of me. We have to go to the police, Leona said firmly. Now. With what? I grinned bitterly. We have no proof, just the words of 2 people against a respected lawyer. But we now know for sure. Leona was excited. These New World children are using some kind of drug to control the elderly and take over their property. That's a crime. And we'll prove it, I nodded. But first I have to talk to Christian. He needs to know that his wife is a fraud who is using him for access to information about the people of the city. Are you sure that's a good idea? Leona looked worried. Sylvia said he was completely under control. He's my son, I said firmly, and he deserves to know the truth. We walked back to the cab where Blaine was waiting. He looked worried. Is everything okay? You both look like you've seen a ghost. Take me home, I said. I have an important call to make. Leona squeezed my hand tightly in farewell. Be careful, Mr. Barrow, and call me as soon as you talk to your son. At home, I sat in front of the phone for a long time, gathering my courage. The clock read 8 o'clock at night. Christian should be home, unless Sylvia had taken him to a cult meeting. Finally, I dialed the number. It was answered after the 3rd ring. Hello. Christian's voice sounded tired. Christian, it's Dad. My voice shook, and I took a deep breath to calm down. We need to talk. It's really important. What's wrong? Are you okay? I'm fine. I lowered my voice to a whisper, even though there was no one else in the house but me. Christian, I overheard Sylvia talking today. She's not who she says she is. Your wife has been deceiving us all these years. It turns out she's... There was a long pause on the other end of the line. All I could hear was Christian's breathing and some background noise. The TV, I guess. Dad? His voice sounded strangely strained. Have you been drinking? I almost laughed. I'd never taken a drop in my mouth in my life. Edna had joked that even at our wedding, I'd only had a taste of champagne to show off. You know I didn't, I replied. Christian, I'm serious. Your wife is a fraud. She's a member of some sect, the Children of the New World, and she's using you to get information about the people of the city. The Children of the New World, Hinoik. He interjected. There was something new in his voice now, a wariness. How do you know that name? I overheard her on the phone today. First in some strange language, then she switched to English. I took a deep breath. She was saying that I suspected something, that you didn't notice anything, and that she was trying to slip me some kind of drug. Wait a minute. Christian's voice was now filled with anger. Have you been spying on my wife? Not exactly, I stammered, realizing how it looked. I just happened to be nearby and heard... Dad, that's enough. Christian cut me off abruptly. I don't want to hear it. Sylvia is a wonderful person. She cares for you more than you deserve. And you're making up some crazy stories. They're not bullshit stories. I felt my anger boiling over. I heard her talking about some drug that they were testing on 3 subjects, including a woman named Gloria Pratt. She said these people were in a state of total suggestibility, and would sign any documents. "You're out of your mind." Christian's voice sounded not just irritation, but real rage. "Sylvia is a lawyer. She talks about documents every day. And you're paranoid and you're turning this into some kind of conspiracy." I felt my hands shaking. Talking to me like that? After everything I'd done for him? "Listen to me," I gritted my teeth. "This woman is not who she says she is. She's using some kind of drug to control the elderly and take over their property. And she wants me too." "Shut up," Christian shouted so loudly that I yanked the phone away from my ear. "I won't let you say those things about my wife. You've never had a single kind word for her. You've never accepted her from the beginning. And now you're making up all this nonsense." "Christian," I tried to speak calmly, but my voice was shaking. "I care about you. She's using you. Why do you think she has access to information about the people of the city? Why does she need to know who lives alone? Who has what diseases? She works in social services," Christian blurted out. "Of course she's interested in people." "What kind of social work?" I was stunned. "You said she was a lawyer." There was a pause. I could almost see Christian mentally cursing his mistake. "She's a social services lawyer," he said at last, but his voice sounded uncertain. "She works with vulnerable people." "Can you hear yourself?" I was almost shouting. "You don't even know exactly where your wife works." "I do," he snapped. "I just don't think I should have to answer to you." I closed my eyes, trying to calm down. This conversation wasn't going the way I'd planned. I needed to change my tactics. "Christian," I started again, softer. "When was the last time you were in Sylvia's office? Have you even seen where she works?" Silence. Then a muffled reply. "What difference does it make?" "It makes a big difference," Amira insisted. "Do you even know what she does all day long?" "I know enough." His voice sounded tired now. "Dad, I don't want to continue this conversation. You've always been stubborn and suspicious. But now you're out of line." "I was crossing the line today," I said quietly. "I followed your wife. And you know what I saw? She was going into the house of a lonely old woman with a box. And then I heard her on the phone saying that the woman was one of the subjects they were testing some kind of drug on. If you keep this up," Christian's voice turned icy, "we're going to have to cut off all communication. I'm not going to let you denigrate my wife." "I'm trying to protect you," I exclaimed. "Christian, she's a member of a cult. They manipulate people, use them, take their money and property." "Stop it!" He went into a screaming match. "How dare you? Sylvia's the only person who really cares about me. She accepts me for who I am. Not like you. Always dissatisfied, always criticizing." "Christian," I was shocked by his outburst. "No, now you listen." He wouldn't let me get a word in edgewise. "All my life you've looked at me like I'm a disappointment. Why didn't you go to college? Why did you become a mailman? Why did you get married so late? Nothing I did was good enough for you. And Sylvia is the only person who sees value in me." I opened my mouth to object, but the words stuck in my throat. Was that the kind of father I was? Had I never shown Christian how proud I was of him? "Okanine, I loved you," I finally squeezed out. "I always wanted the best for you." "The best by your standards," he replied bitterly. "Not by my standards." I felt something tearing, the thin thread that still held us together. But I couldn't let go. Not now. Not when his safety was at stake. "Christian, listen to me. She talked about you as someone who's totally in control. What do you think that means?" "Ahina, it doesn't mean anything because you're making it up." He started raising his voice again. "I didn't make it up," I insisted. "I heard it with my own ears. She said you didn't notice anything, that they had information about the mail routes. Why would they have that information, Christian? Ask yourself that question. Maybe to help people," he said. "What you're talking about is a social support program. The Children of the New World helps people in difficult situations." I froze. He knew the name of the group. He was defending them. "Do you know about this group?" I asked slowly. "Do you know that Sylvia is a member?" There was a long pause. "Yes," Christian said at last. "Yes, I know. So what of it?" "It's not a cult, as you say. It's a spiritual community that helps people find their path and purpose in life. They do good deeds." "What good deeds?" I felt a chill go down my spine. "Christian, they use some kind of drugs to control the elderly, and make them sign documents. They want to take over my house and my account. Not true, he shouted. They help people get rid of fears and limitations. These drugs are just supplements. They help you clear your mind and see the true nature of things. Clear the mind? I couldn't believe my ears. Christian, are you even listening to yourself? That's classic cultist talk. You've been zombified. I can see clearer than ever, he answered with frightening calmness. My mentor has opened my eyes to many things. Mentor? I went cold. Who is a mentor? Hari, the man who leads us to the new world. Christian's voice had a reverent note of awe in it. He came to help people free themselves from the shackles of the past and build a new future. I closed my eyes, feeling the ground slipping from under my feet. My son spoke like a robot, repeating memorized phrases. They were getting to him. How long have you been in this group? I asked quietly. I'm not a member, he corrected. I just share their values, and I've known about them for about a year. And Sylvia? Sylvia was chosen by the mentor, he said with pride in his voice. She's one of his closest assistants. The picture was becoming clearer and more horrible. Christian? I tried to speak calmly, though inside I was screaming with fear for my son. Do they give you any pills? Or maybe some special drinks at the meetings? They are cleansers, he answered. They help you see the truth. They are drug, I said bluntly. They give you drugs to control your mind. That's why you don't notice that your wife is using you. That's why you don't see the truth. The only one who doesn't see the truth is you, Christian replied coldly. You're stuck in your cynical, suspicious world. You couldn't even make your own wife happy. She's lived her whole life with a man incapable of true love and trust. His words hit me like a slap in the face. I jerked away from the phone as if it were red hot in my hand. Don't you dare talk about your mother, I whispered. Don't you dare. Does it really hurt your eyes? There was something new and cruel in his voice. Mom was unhappy with you. She was just afraid to leave, afraid to be alone. Shut up, I was yelling now. You don't know what you're talking about. Edna and I loved each other. If you knew how to love, Christian hissed, you'd love me too. You wouldn't have spent your whole life trying to remake me. I sank heavily into the chair, feeling my heart pounding. This wasn't my son, not the boy I'd raised. This was someone else, brainwashed with a poisoned mind. Christian, I made one last attempt. Please think, these people are manipulating you. They're using you and Sylvia to gain access to information about elderly, lonely people. They're giving you some kind of drugs that alter your consciousness. It's a classic cult scheme. No, Dad, Christian's voice sounded almost pitiful. You're the one who doesn't understand. Sylvia and Mentor are helping me to become a better person. They're showing me the way to happiness and a fulfilling life, a path you could never show me. And part of that path is cheating the elderly and taking their property, I asked bitterly. You've got it all wrong, Christian sighed. They help people to free themselves from material attachments. Property is a burden that hinders spiritual growth. By donating it to the community, a person is freed. And this nonsense you call seeing more clearly? I couldn't believe my ears. Christian, this is a classic scam. They're just scamming money out of naive people. I can see it's pointless to talk to you. His voice became distant. You're too caught up in your cynicism and mistrust. I hope that someday you could see the light too, but I guess it's too late for you. Christian, wake up. I was practically begging. They've brainwashed you. They're giving you drugs and calling it cleansing. They're criminals. You know what? His voice suddenly turned icy. I think we should stop communicating, at least for a while, until you learn to respect my choices and my wife. Christian, don't do this. I felt a lump come to my throat. I'm your father. I love you. I want to protect you. From what? From happiness? From the meaning of life? He grinned bitterly. No, Dad. The only one I need to be protected from is you and your accusations and suspicions. Son, I was almost crying. Please, let's meet. We'll talk in person. I'll explain everything. I have nothing to explain, he cut me off. I've already made up my mind. Don't call me again. And don't come to our house on Sunday. Sylvia and I are going out of town for an indefinite period of time. What? I got cold feet. Where are you going? None of your business, he said. Goodbye, Dad. Christian, no, wait, I shouted. But the phone was already ringing. I sat with the phone in my hand for a long time, unable to move. The room swam before my eyes. My son knew. All this time he knew his wife was in a cult. Moreover, he himself was under their influence. They'd given him some drugs, brainwashed him, made him believe in their delusions. And now they're taking him somewhere so I can't get to him. It was worse than I could have imagined. My son didn't just marry a woman who turned out to be a fraud. He became part of their scheme himself. He protected them. He trusted them. He allowed them to use his access to their email information. And now I've lost him, maybe forever. I remembered Sylvia's words I'd heard in the alley. Christian doesn't notice anything. He's completely under control. She was lying. He noticed. He knew. He had simply accepted his part in this game. He chose her and this cult over me, instead of a normal life, instead of the truth. The phone rang, making me wince. I grabbed the phone, hoping it was Christian, that he'd come to his senses. Hello? Mr. Barrow? It was Leona. How did the conversation with your son go? I took a deep breath, trying to gather my thoughts. Worse than I could have imagined, I said finally. He knows, Leona. He knows about the children of the New World. He supports them. What? Her voice sounded shocked. But how? They got to him. I felt tears coming to my throat. They're giving him some kind of cleanser, brainwashing him. He defends Sylvia, saying that they help people free themselves from material attachments. I grinned bitterly. I mean, simply put, they swindle them out of their possessions. Oh my God, Leona exhaled. What are we going to do? He said he and Sylvia were leaving town. Didn't say where. Broke up with me. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Shokakanorin. I lost my son, Leon. They took him away from me. Mr. Barrow, her voice became firm. You can't give up. If they're really giving him some kind of medication, then he's not himself. It's like kidnapping. We have to go to the police. With what? I asked tiredly. We have no proof. Just my word against the word of a respected lawyer. And my own son will testify against me. Say I'm an old man out of my mind. Then we need to find proof, Leona said firmly. You were talking about Gloria Pratt. Maybe we should talk to her. If what Sylvia said is true, and they've been testing their drug on her, she's not likely to be adequate. I shook my head, though Leona couldn't see it. We need something more substantial. Maybe we should follow the New World Center itself, she suggested. See who goes there? What they do, I wondered. It could be dangerous, but I couldn't see any other way. Maybe you're right, I said at last. But not tonight. Yeah, I need time to come to my senses. Of course, Leona agreed softly. Get some rest, and tomorrow we'll think together about what to do next. After talking to Leona, I sat in the dark for a long time, staring at one point. I could see Christian's face in front of me, not his current face, cold and detached, but his childhood face. The way he smiled when I took him fishing, how he frowned when he tried to solve a difficult math problem, the way he cried at his mother's funeral. Had I lost him forever? Had these crooks, these criminals, taken my son from me? First they brainwashed him, and now they're taking him somewhere I can't get to him. No, I couldn't let that happen. Despite our fight, despite his cruel words, he was still my son, and I had to save him, even if he didn't like it, even if I had to turn the whole town upside down to do it. I stood up, feeling determination supplanting despair. I will find proof. I will expose this cult. I will save my son, even if he thinks he doesn't need saving. I reached for the phone to call Blaine. I'm going to need his help. Leona and I will need to stake out the New World Center, gather information, maybe even infiltrate it. It would be dangerous, but I didn't see any other way. I may have lost my son, but not forever. I would get him back, no matter what it cost me. The morning after my fight with Christian greeted me with a headache and stiff joints. I barely slept, tossing and turning in bed, replaying our conversation in my head. His words about his mother were burning me from the inside out. Was Edna really unhappy with me? No, that's impossible. It wasn't Christian talking. It was the drugs he'd been drugged with. The cup of tea went cold as I gathered my thoughts. I was supposed to meet with Sheriff Hayes Colton today. Leona had set up a meeting for 10 in the morning at his office. I didn't know if he'd believe us, but it was the only chance I had. I had chosen my clothes carefully, a strict suit that I wore only on special occasions. It was important to look put together, appropriate. No sign of the out-of-my-mind old man, as Christian might say. Blaine pulled up at 9:30 sharp. Over the days, he had become something of a silent ally. Never asked too many questions, just drove me where I needed to go. Sometimes I wondered what he thought about all this, but I thanked fate that he didn't run away thinking I was crazy. "To the police station?" he asked when I got into the car. "Yes," I adjusted my tie. "Leona will be waiting for us." "Whatever you say, Mr. Barrow." Leona was already waiting at the entrance to the station, fidgeting nervously with the strap of her purse. When she saw me, she tried to smile, but it was a strained smile. "You ready?" she asked as I approached. "As ready as I can be." I leaned heavily on my cane. "Is he expecting us?" "Yeah, I talked to him last night. Didn't go into details, just said we had information about a suspicious group in town." Sheriff Hayes Colton was a large man in his 50s with shrewd blue eyes and bushy eyebrows. His office was small and cluttered with papers. Fishing photos hung on the wall, the same ones Christian and I had once had. "Mr. Barrow, Ms. Pickering." He nodded to us, pointing to chairs. "What can I do for you?" Leona looked at me, and I realized it was up to me to start. I took a deep breath and told her everything. The suspicions about Sylvia, the surveillance, the overheard conversation, Christian's strange behavior, the children of the new world. The sheriff listened without interrupting, making occasional notes in his notebook. "So you're saying," he said when I finished, "that there's a cult in our town that manipulates the elderly to take over their property?" "Yes," I nodded. "They use some kind of drugs to make people suggestible." "And your sister-in-law is a member of this sect?" "Yes. And they seem to have recruited my son." The sheriff leaned back in his chair, tapping his pen on the desk. "Serious allegations, Mr. Barrow. What evidence do you have besides the overheard conversation?" I looked back at Leona. "This is it, the weakest point in our story. So far, only circumstantial," I admitted. "Sure, but we can gather more if we have your support." The sheriff rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "I've heard of this group, the Children of the New World. They opened their center a few months ago. No complaints against them so far. On the contrary, they organize charity events, help with food deliveries to the elderly." "It's their cover," Leona exclaimed. "It's how they reach potential victims." "Sherry, maybe," the sheriff raised his hand, urging calm. "But I want facts, not conjecture." "Gloria Pratt," I said. "Sylvia mentioned her as one of the subjects they were testing their drug on. We can start with her." "Gloria Pratt?" The sheriff frowned. "She recently signed her house over to some charity. For all I know, she's about to move into a nursing home." "See?" I stepped forward. "It's their handwriting. They made her give up the property." The sheriff drummed his fingers on the table thoughtfully. "Mr. Barrow, I understand your concerns, but without concrete evidence, I can't launch a formal investigation. However," he paused, "I can unofficially verify certain facts, like finding out more about this charitable foundation that Gloria signed the house over to." Yeah, that's something," Leona sighed. "What about my son?" I asked. "He said he and Sylvia are leaving town. I'm afraid they want to isolate him permanently. When do they plan to leave?" "I don't know. Soon." He didn't say specifically. The sheriff rubbed his forehead. "Look, Mr. Barrow, I understand your concern, but your son is a grown man. If he's decided to leave with his wife, I can't stop him. Not seeing him, but he's out of his mind. They're giving him some kind of drugs, brainwashing him." "These are serious charges," the sheriff said gently, "and without proof, there's nothing I can do. But here's what I suggest. I'll check out the foundation, find out more about the Children of the New World and their leader. You and Ms. Pickering see if you can talk to Gloria Pratt. Maybe she can shed some light on this situation." It wasn't as much as I'd hoped, but it was better than nothing. Leona and I thanked the sheriff and walked out of the station. "What do you think?" I asked her once we were outside. He didn't fully believe it, but he didn't dismiss it. She smiled weakly. "That's good. I need to talk to Gloria Pratt, tonight." Blaine was waiting for us in the car. When we approached, he rolled down the window. How'd it go? Not as bad as it could have been, I replied. Now we have to go to Gloria Pratt's. What's the address? Leona said she knew where Gloria lived, so we went there. On the way, I told her about Christian's defense of the children of the New World, how he talked about liberation from material attachments. It's a classic cult scheme, Leona nodded. First, isolate the person from family and friends, then force them to give up their possessions in favor of the group. And it's all covered up with pretty words about spiritual growth, I added bitterly. Gloria Pratt's house, the same one I'd seen Sylvia enter, was small but neat. Flowers on the windowsills, a freshly painted door. It didn't look like the home of someone about to move in. Leona and I went to the door and she knocked. There was no answer for a long time. Then we heard shuffling footsteps and the door opened. Gloria Pratt was a thin woman with gray hair and a bun. She was leaning on a cane just like mine. Yes, her voice sounded uncertain. Mrs. Pratt? Leona smiled. My name is Leona Pickering. I'm a pharmacist at Riverview Pharmacy. And this is Mr. Barrow. We'd like to talk to you if you don't mind. About what? Gloria frowned, but there was more confusion than suspicion in her gaze. About the children of the New World, I said bluntly, and about Sylvia Barrow. Gloria's eyes widened, and I could see the fear in them. Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. She tried to close the door, but I gently held her back with my hand. Please, Mrs. Pratt, we don't want to hurt you. On the contrary, we want to help you. I'm Christian's father, Sylvia's husband. Something flashed in her eyes. Recognition, perhaps. Come in, she said at last, stepping back from the door. But not for long. I've got some procedures. We entered the small but cozy living room. It was clean and neat, but something seemed wrong. I didn't realize what it was until I noticed the lack of pictures. Nothing personal on the walls or on the shelves, as if a ghost, not a person, lived here. Have a seat, Gloria pointed to the couch. What can I do for you? Mrs. Pratt, I began cautiously. We know you're in contact with the children of the New World, Sylvia Barrow specifically. They are helping me. Her voice sounded monotonous, as if she were repeating a learned phrase. They showed me the way to the light. I looked back at Leona, the same words Christian had used. And how are they helping you? I asked softly. They bring food, Gloria said slowly, as if in a dream. They give me medicine that makes me feel better. They helped me realize that material things are a burden to be freed from. Is that why you signed your house over to a charity? I asked cautiously. Yes, she nodded. Now I am free from those shackles. Soon I will move to the abode of light, where I will find true happiness with the other followers. The abode of light? Leona asked. What is that place? A new home for the chosen ones, Gloria said, a strange gleam in her eyes. There is no sickness there, no suffering, only light and joy. I felt uneasy. This woman spoke like a zombie, repeating memorized phrases without expression. Mrs. Pratt, I leaned toward her. Are you taking any of the medications the children of the New World give you? She blinked as if she didn't understand the question. Ma, the medicine clears the mind and opens the way to the light, she said mechanically. May I see these medicines? Leona asked in a professional tone. Gloria hesitated, but then nodded and rose slowly. They're in the kitchen. We followed her. There was a box on the kitchen table, just like the one I'd seen in Sylvia's hands. Gloria opened it and took out a small vial of unlabeled white pills. Maggie, here, she held it out to Leona. I take one each morning and evening. They help me to see the truth. Leona took the vial carefully and opened it, sniffing. Can I take one pill to analyze, as she asked? I want to make sure they won't harm you. Gloria frowned, but then her face smoothed. Of course, they can do no harm. They carry only light. Leona carefully shook out one pill and tucked it into a small bag she pulled out of her purse. Mrs. Pratt, I decided to come at it from the other side. Do you remember your husband? What was his name? Her face became confused for a moment, as if she were trying to remember something important. George, she said at last. His name was George. And you loved him? Love is an attachment. That monotonous voice again. Attachments keep you from seeing the light. I'm free of them. And the pictures? I didn't give up. Did you have pictures of George? Material things are a burden, she repeated. I was free of them. We spent another hour or so with Gloria, trying to cut through the fog in her mind. Occasional glimpses of her former personality slipped in. When she reminisced about her grandchildren, about the trip to Europe she and George had taken years ago. But then that detached, mechanical voice would return, repeating memorized phrases about light and liberation. When we left, I felt shattered. Gloria Pratt was living proof of what the children of the New World did to people. They literally erased their personality, replacing it with a set of meaningless slogans. They turned her into a doll, I said to Leona as we got into Blaine's car. That's terrible. I'm taking this pill to a chemist I know. Leona clutched the baggie tightly in her hand. He works in a lab in Houston. Maybe he can determine the composition. Okay, I nodded. I'll call the sheriff and tell him what we found out. We agreed to meet tomorrow, and Blaine drove me home. I felt exhausted to the max. Too much information, too many emotions over the past few days. Upon entering the house, I knew immediately that something was wrong. The door hadn't been forced, but there was a foreign odor in the air, sweet, cloying. I cautiously made my way into the living room and froze. On the wall just above the fireplace where the urn containing Edna's ashes stood was a strange symbol, a circle with rays coming from the center. Like a primitive depiction of the sun, only there were 13 rays, each ending in a small cross. Next to the symbol was an inscription made in red paint. Light sees all. I felt everything inside go cold. They were here, in my house. They knew I had discovered their secret. Walking quickly through the rooms, I found things moved around slightly, as if someone was looking for something. My stash behind the bookshelf where I kept the new medicine was still intact. Obviously they hadn't found it, but the medicine cabinet in the bathroom was missing a few bottles, the usual painkillers and the sleeping pills Dr. Sheldon had prescribed me, but I hardly ever used. In the bedroom, the pillow was upside down and the blanket was crumpled, as if someone had been lying on my bed. I shuddered in disgust. I went back to the living room and stared at the ominous symbol for a long time. It was a warning. They knew I had revealed their secret, knew I'd talked to the sheriff. Maybe they had their own people on the police force? Or was Sylvia following me? I picked up the phone and called the sheriff. He didn't answer right away, and when I told him what had happened, there was concern in his voice. "Don't touch anything," he said. "I'll be right there." 20 minutes later, Sheriff Colton was inspecting my house, photographing the symbol on the wall and carefully gathering possible evidence. He had a young deputy with him, taking notes in a notebook. "Did they take your medication?" The sheriff frowned when I showed him the empty medicine cabinet. "Here? Yeah, painkillers and sleeping pills. Maybe they wanted to switch them out for their own med," he suggested. "It's a good thing you kept the new medicine in the stash." I told him about our visit to Gloria Pratt and the pill Leona had taken for analysis. "This is getting serious," the sheriff rubbed his chin. "Trespassing, threats, possible distribution of unknown drugs. I have grounds for an official investigation." It was a small victory, but I felt no joy, only fatigue and anxiety. While the sheriff and his deputy finished their inspection, I sat back in my chair, looking at the symbol on the wall. What did it mean? What was even going on in our quiet town? "Mr. Barrow," the sheriff approached me, finishing his work. "I don't think you should stay here tonight. Do you have a place to sleep tonight?" I wondered. The only relative in town was Christian, but I certainly couldn't go to him. I had no friends, I'd never been much of a social person, and after Edna's death, I'd become withdrawn. "I could stay at the motel," I suggested. "I'd rather have you under supervision," the sheriff frowned. "Maybe at Miss Pickering's." I shook my head. "I don't want to put Leona in danger." "Then?" The sheriff hesitated. "Maybe at my house? My wife and I have a guest room. It would be safest." I was touched by his suggestion. I didn't expect such concern from a man I hardly knew. "Thank you, Sheriff Colton. If it's no inconvenience to you—" "No inconvenience at all," he smiled. "My Martha will be glad of the company. And call me Hayes, please." I gathered the necessities, a change of clothes, toiletries, medicine from the stash. The sheriff, Hayes, helped me carry the bag to the car. "What about the symbol?" I asked, looking back at the house. "I don't want that abomination on my wall." We're done with the evidence, so you can paint over it when you get back, Hayes said. But your safety is more important right now. On the way to his house, I called Leona from Hayes' cell phone and told her what had happened. She was alarmed but relieved that the sheriff was taking the situation seriously. I sent the pill to the lab, she said. The results will be back in a day or two. Be careful, I asked. They could come to you too. Don't worry, I asked my brother to stay with me for a few days. He's an ex-Marine, so he can handle any sectarian. The sheriff's house was a cozy two-story building on the edge of town. His wife, Martha, a full woman with kind eyes, welcomed me like an old friend, immediately seating me at the table and feeding me a home-cooked dinner. Their children were long grown and gone, so the house seemed too big for the couple. You can stay as long as you need to, Martha said, pouring my tea. The guest room was empty anyway. After dinner, Hayes showed me to my room and suggested I rest. I was grateful for that. The last few days had exhausted me both physically and emotionally. Lying in the unfamiliar bed, I thought about Christian. Where is he now? What is this cult doing to him? Will we be able to save him before he turns into an unwilling puppet like Gloria Pratt? And I was also thinking about the symbol on the wall of my house. The light sees all. What did it mean? A threat? A warning? Either way, one thing was certain. I had incurred the wrath of the children of the New World, and I had to confront them to save my son and perhaps many others in our city. With these anxious thoughts, I finally fell into a restless sleep. The results of the pill test came back 2 days later. Hayes called me early in the morning, his voice sounding excited. Mr. Barrow, we found something. Can you come down to the station? I was ready in 15 minutes. Martha insisted I eat breakfast before I left and drove me to the station herself in their family car. Over the 2 days, she'd come to treat me like family, perhaps seeing me as a replacement for her children who'd grown up and moved away. Leona was already waiting in the sheriff's office, clutching a piece of paper that I realized was the result of the analysis. Good morning, she nodded at me. Her eyes glittered feverishly. We have some news. Have a seat, Mr. Barrow. Hayes pointed to a chair. The results of the analysis confirmed your fears. The pill contains a mixture of substances, scopolamine, low-dose ketamine, and some other compound the lab couldn't identify. What does that mean? I asked, though I already knew the answer. It means, Leona stepped forward, that these pills do affect a person's consciousness and will. Scopolamine is sometimes called a zombie drug. It makes people suggestible, suppresses the will, and ketamine in small doses causes strange states of consciousness, something like trance. Using these substances together can cause serious side effects, Hayes added, from hallucinations to complete amnesia. That would explain Gloria Pratt's condition. And Christian, I added quietly. Probably, Hayes nodded. Now we have good reason to investigate. Distribution of unauthorized psychotropic substances is a federal offense. What do we do next? I asked. We have a search warrant for the New World Center. Hayes tapped his fingers on the table. And another one for your son and daughter-in-law's house. My heart clenched. I knew it was necessary, but the thought of the police breaking into Christian's house was agonizing. When? At 11 o'clock this morning. We want to conduct the operations at the same time, so they don't have time to hide evidence or warn each other. I want to be present, I said firmly. Hayes frowned. Mr. Barrow, it could be dangerous. It's my son. I wasn't going to give in. I have to be there for him. The sheriff sighed but nodded. Okay, but you'll stay in the car until we've secured it. And I'll go too, Leona said suddenly. As a pharmacist, I can help identify the drugs on site. Hayes looked at both of us, then shook his head with a slight smile. You two are the most stubborn people I've ever met. Fine, but you will follow all instructions. That's out of the question. We agreed, and the sheriff began to outline the plan of operation. He had assembled a team of 6 policemen. 3 would go to the New World Center, 3 to Christian and Sylvia's house. Hayes himself would supervise the search at the center and his deputy at the house. We have reason to believe, he said, that the leader of this sect, whom they call Mentor, will be at the center this morning. Our informant said that they have some sort of internal leadership meeting on Thursdays at 11 o'clock. Who is this Mentor? I asked. Did you find out anything about him? A little. Hayes pulled a photograph out of a folder and put it on the table. It showed a tall man with gray hair and a neat beard. Dressed all in white, he looked like a typical movie guru, respectable, charismatic, with a penetrating gaze. His real name was Alex Mercer. He had already come to the attention of the authorities in Arizona and New Mexico, where he ran similar groups under different names. At 11 sharp, the operation began. I sat in a police car outside the New World Center, watching the officers go inside. Time dragged agonizingly slow. Finally, after 20 minutes, people began to be let out of the building. The last to be taken out was Mentor, Alex Mercer, handcuffed but with an arrogant expression on his face. Christian was not among the arrested. Hayes approached the car. "You can step out now, Mr. Barrow. We've secured it. Inside is a real lab for making these pills and documents. Lists of names, addresses, property information." At that moment, Hayes' cell phone rang. He answered it, and I could see his face change. "I got it," he said. "Get them down to the station. We'll be there soon." They found Sylvia and Christian at home. They found a supply of pills and documents, powers of attorney, deeds of gift, wills, including one prepared in your name. "And Christian," my voice broke. "What about him? He's, not at his best," Hayes said cautiously. "He seems to be heavily medicated, but physically intact." Sylvia had already been questioned at the station. Christian was sitting in the hallway under the supervision of a policeman with his hands on his head. He looked exhausted, pale, with circles under his eyes, with shaking hands. "Christian," I walked over to him. "Son?" He looked up, his eyes cloudy, unfocused. "Dad?" His voice was hoarse. "What? What's going on?" "It's going to be okay." I sat down gently next to him. "You're with the police. You'll get help." "Where's Sylvia?" He looked around. I need my pills." "No." I put my hand gently on his shoulder. "Those pills were making you sick, Christian. They were changing your mind, making you do things you didn't want to do." At that moment, Sylvia came out of the interrogation room in handcuffs. She saw us and froze for a moment. There was no remorse or fear in her eyes, just cold calculation. She tried to smile at Christian, but the policeman was already leading her away. "Sylvia!" Christian jerked forward, but I held him back. "Where are they taking her?" "She's under arrest," I said. "They're all under arrest. The children of the New World are crooks, Christian. They gave people drugs to control them and take their property." Slowly, there was understanding in his eyes. They gave me pills," he whispered. "First for concentration, then for relaxation, and then I couldn't go without them." "They were drugs, son," I squeezed his shoulder. "They made you dependent to control you." The doctor who examined Christian recommended hospitalization for detoxification. When Hayes came to report it, Christian suddenly straightened up. "I don't want to go to the hospital. I want to go home." "Son, you need help," I tried to explain. "These substances in your system." "I know," he raised his head. "I know what they were doing to me. I felt it, somewhere deep down, but I couldn't fight it." "You'll get help," I assured him. "Shirmashiwam, and when you're better, we'll get you back on track. We'll start over." He looked at me for a long time, then shook his head. "No, Dad, it's too late for that." "What do you mean?" I can't go back to my old life," he said with difficulty. "Not after what I did, what I let happen to myself." "Christian, it's not your fault," I tried to get through to him. "You were tricked, used." "No," he shook his head. "I let it happen. I wanted it to. I was weak, and I dragged Sylvia into it." I looked at him in surprise. "Sylvia was part of this scheme from the beginning." "No," he objected again. "She met them through me. I started going to their meetings first, Dad. I brought her there. I couldn't believe my ears." "But, why?" Christian chuckled bitterly. "Because they offered something I never had. Recognition, a sense of self-importance, the feeling that I was doing something meaningful." He looked me straight in the eye. "All the things I've never gotten from you." His words hit me like a slap in the face. As the doctors led Christian to the hospital, he turned around and said, "You know, Dad, I'm grateful that you exposed them, for saving me from them, but I can't forgive you for getting me to the point where I needed a cult to feel valued." He paused, then added quietly, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive. A week after the arrest of the children of the New World, I returned to my house. The symbol on the wall had already been painted over, but the house still seemed desecrated. I walked around the rooms and felt like I didn't belong there anymore. Christian stayed at the clinic. I visited him every day, but our conversations were short and tense. A wall had grown between us, and I didn't know how to break it down. Leona became a frequent visitor to my house. She brought food, helped with the cleaning, just kept me company. "What are you going to do next?" she asked me one day. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "Christian doesn't want to see me. The house feels empty. There are too many painful memories in Texas City. Maybe we should start over, in a new place," I wondered. Starting over at 78 seemed almost ridiculous. But then again, what was keeping me here? Maybe you're right. Maybe it was time to turn the page. The next day I called the realtor. A week later, my house was listed for sale. I decided to move to Florida, where it's warmer and easier on my joints. Christian was surprised when I told him about my decision. "You're selling the house?" "But it's my mom's house." "Your mom's not in the house," I replied softly. "She's here." I touched my chest. "And here," I touched his arm. "The house is just walls." He was silent for a long moment, then nodded. "You're probably right." Pause. "Where will you go?" "I haven't decided yet. Maybe south. The heat will be good for my bones." "And what about, us?" he asked so quietly that I barely heard him. "That's up to you." I looked him in the eye. "I'll always be there for you if you want me to be, but I understand if you need time or distance." He nodded without saying a word, but something in his gaze softened. It wasn't peace, not even a truce, but maybe the beginning of the road to it. The day before I left, I sat on the porch of my, now former, home. Most of my belongings were already packed and shipped to a small coastal town in Florida. Leona had come to say goodbye, bringing a homemade pie and a thermos of tea. "Will you miss Texas City?" she asked. "Some parts of it," I answered. "You, for instance." She smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "Promise to write and call and come visit." "I promise," I took her hand. "And you can come visit too. Florida is beautiful any time of year." We sat in cozy silence, watching the sun sink below the horizon. I thought about Christian, about Edna, about my whole life, about the mistakes I'd made, the things I wanted to change, but couldn't. "You know," Leona said suddenly, "despite everything that happened, you did something incredible. You saved a lot of people from that cult." "But you couldn't save your own son," I said bitterly. "You did save him," she said softly. "Maybe not the way you wanted, and the relationship between you is not what you wanted it to be. But he's alive, free of their influence, getting help. That's already a lot." I nodded, realizing she was right. Christian was alive. He was recovering. And maybe one day he would find the strength to forgive me, just as I was trying to forgive myself. The next morning, I walked around the empty house one last time, saying goodbye to my past and preparing myself for a new chapter of life without my son by my side, but with the hope that one day our paths would cross again.